Welcome to the Copy Talk Podcast. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer member, FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Financial planning services through Lighthouse Financial, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Shannon Ross is CEO and managing partner of Lighthouse Financial. Lighthouse and Cambridge are not affiliated. And now, here's your host, Shannon Ross.
Welcome to Copy Talk. This is our weekly podcast. We thank you for our faithful audience tuning in today.
Yeah.
It's cold
Morning,
today
everybody.
here in Colorado.
It's
We're
cold.
about to get a snowstorm. I have to travel up to Boulder
Don't
tonight.
Don't say snowstorm. It's going to be a light
It's just going to be flurries.
I don't like
Sure.
the snowstorm.
So
Let's not.
thank you for joining us. Hopefully
Yeah.
it's warmer
Good morning,
or better
everybody.
where you are.
Or it's morning to us. May
It
not be
is.
morning. Is it still morning? What time is it?
It's 11
There you
here.
go.
So it
Thank you.
technically, I think,
It is
qualifies
technically
as
still morning. Yep.
So how are you? You're all bundled up.
I'm good. Well, this morning I do have on. I did take off my Carhartt coveralls because I thought
you
that
have
might
Carhartt. You're sponsored by Carhartt this morning.
Yeah, I wish I was sponsored by Carhartt.
Is that your hurt shoulder? Sorry.
No, that's the
From
other one.
last
Oh,
week?
I'm all
Okay.
healed.
Oh,
We're good. We're good. No yawning injuries to report today. But so this is the sweatshirt I put on, and then I put my coveralls on over it, and then I have my car. I got all new Carhartt gear, by the way. I'm so not plugging for
Now you're
Carhartt.
official barn
But there is, let me tell you, the
hands, so.
significant amount of warmth. It is to the point that, I'm like sweating in the barn, and it's like 18 degrees outside. But that said, I let them out to pasture now in the morning.
The donkeys.
So
for those of you
for those
who
of
are
you
new to the
who
show,
are new to the show,
April
I have
got donkeys.
two minis. They're not just donkeys.
They're miniature.
They're
donkeys.
miniature
They look
donkeys.
like robotic miniature.
They do.
Sweet, cute little.
Yeah,
fake
their little
animals.
legs, Pete and Pistol. So in the morning we feed, I shovel all the stuff, paddock and stall, and I tell them good morning, and I give them all the scratches, and which in the morning they're like, get off me, I just want to eat. And then I lead them out to pasture. So for the day, and so I did take off the coveralls because I thought that might be a little too much for this. I was tempted though, but it is my Carhartt, my
Nice.
Carhartt sweatshirt.
Well,
So
how
I
are the
bundled
diva
up.
donkeys? How they like your barn? How they like their new
love
digs?
them so much. I think the fact that we have a heated barn is also spoiling
Well, it's
them.
a 5-star accommodation
Yeah,
for
I think so.
a donkey
I
or
think
animal
so.
of
Yeah.
any kind.
They're good. We did have an episode.
Uh-oh.
So the other night, Sunday night, the day before Martin Luther King, right? I let my son have a couple friends over for a sleepover because they didn't have school the next day. And he asked to take his friends down to the barn to see the donkeys. And you know how teenagers don't have a brain?
Details.
Anybody know teenagers don't have a brain? Okay. He left the stall door open and the barn door open. Just so you know, it's nighttime. These are two small, dark donkeys. And they got out. And they caught some freedom in their eye, and they were off.
Oh, no.
Off down the street. So we live on acreage, right? And so they got over to the other person's property.
Oh, no.
And none of us really have fences. I mean, we do, but we
Right.
don't. And then they got into the trees.
Oh, gosh.
Let me just tell you that my son and his two friends, there was a lot of colorful language going on out of my mouth and my husband's mouth. We have on like all the gear too. Like
Yeah.
these boots are heavy. We're running after these donkeys. I honestly thought they're gone. When they hit those trees and I couldn't see them, and Davis,
goodness.
and we are still yelling very colorful language in front of our kids' friends. But one of them's been there a million times, but the other one was a brand newbie that we'd never met
They
before.
might not be coming back.
So we finally, what seemed like forever, were able to get them back towards the barn and chase them into the arena. And
Oh, blessed.
yep. And so they were actually, for the next 24 hours, they were pretty persnickety. They were nervous. They were around me, around
Yeah.
Dave, especially still Dave, because he's the one that finally got them wrangled. But they
Yeah.
were the next morning, they didn't have anything to do with me.
Wow.
Frickers, I'm still feeding you. All right. So that's what happened.
Well, how'd you know that they got out?
Oh, because I was standing in my kitchen and David, I was about to go down to feed for dinner.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I'm just putting on my gear and David looks at it, he goes, there's a donkey outside our barn, to which, so there's one. So we open the door and we tell Eden, whose little head peeks out of the barn, I'm like, back up slowly, because I'm
Yeah.
thinking he won't leave the other one. Back up
Sure.
slowly, open the door. What I didn't know is the other one was also in the barn. So he backed up slowly, and the other one just came out, and off they went. And down
on
the
their
street.
little adventure.
Down the street. I was starting to get called neighbors, like somebody. I mean, and they don't come to grain because you don't grain them.
Right. That's true.
They don't.
That'd be
It's
tricky.
a lot hard.
It's
Yeah.
harder than horses.
Yeah. And so at
Interesting.
night, even especially,
Well, I'm glad you got them back.
it was very dramatic.
You got a little PTSD.
We did.
over it,
And
but-
after we got inside, we went upstairs to our son's friends and said, just so you know, we don't normally talk like that in this house. We're really sorry. I think they got
we
a good...
normally don't threaten lives of children.
Right. At least not in front of everyone. No, but I think they felt really bad because they felt like it was their fault, not the two boys. It's Eden's fault. It's Eden. His donkeys, his barn, it's his fault. Those boys don't know what to do.
You would think somewhere there would be enough brain power, though, to logically think of what to do. But with teenagers, it's a crapshoot.
The great thing is that they forget quickly, and I DoorDash all of them McDonald's. I totally bribed them back
bribe
into
them
my
with
graces,
sweets and
into their
food,
graces.
yes.
Yeah. So all is well, and hopefully they come back
God,
over.
They're back. Golly.
They're back.
Well,
And now
that's an
we're on.
eventful week.
The donkeys and I are on good terms again.
Yeah.
And they'll eat out of my hands now.
They
And
like you again.
They like
They
me
feel
again.
safe again.
Yeah.
Well, good. That's good.
Long story, but I had to share.
No, that is good. That's a rough week. I was out of town, or I would have come and helped you. I had to fly to Nashville, and thankfully,
Well, I was about to ask you about your trip.
Well, thankfully, it's my first trip in like a year. I used to travel maybe once a month, but now with COVID, no, it's just not worth it. So unless I absolutely have to, I don't go. But this weekend we didn't have a choice. So my husband and one of my son had a tournament in Phoenix, and so I took my daughter to her volleyball tournament and carted along my other two sons to Nashville. So, but with all the logistics going on in the Ross household of all the flights and all the rental cars and all the hotels, thankfully everything went flawlessly,
Which is a
I think is
miracle
a
right now.
miracle. Like I was very, very thankful. So I'm glad it's over. I don't want to do it
Don't wanna
again.
do it again?
I'm not leaving the state.
So we're not traveling for my
in
birthday?
a plane. Oh, we can, but only
We're
driving.
gonna driving.
Which is why we have like that 5-hour radius that we've,
Well, we have
drawn
some
in.
ideas.
We do.
We do.
But I'm done. Like flying is just not worth it still. So.
I do have to ask you, if you didn't watch last week's show, you're not going to understand.
Yes, so tune in
But
if you need
and
to
our
tune in.
producer Ryan, who I'm calling out right now, had a genius hashtag last week, and but go ahead.
Hashtag exit row.
Exit row. That's
row,
it.
'cause we were
See?
talking about exit rows and our love of flying.
And we wished he had said it. And he said it
know.
after we were off
That
air,
was a
and
good
so I'm
one.
so glad he piped
So
up today.
now we told him he has privilege to talk
Anytime he wants to.
Anytime he wants,
Yeah.
because he has color.
This-
and you too, Kelly, to add.
I
We're
know.
a team here.
I always look to them for I'm not a moron, right? Like y'all, and they look confused too when you say all your words.
When I say, what, am I the only person? Yes, I'm always
And then I
the
look
only
at the room,
person.
and
'Cause
yeah.
all you are like 80s babies or 90s babies, some of you. Good
yeah.
God. But
She's like, yeah. So were you on an
So-
exit row? And then we'll move
no,
on.
thankfully, no. No exit row, no first class.
Okay.
There was no luxury on this trip.
Well, remember, I don't like the exit row, so I would have been.
This is just a very primitive way to travel, but hey,
had
we
a good
made
time.
it. We're all pretty much healthy, and we, so all of that in account, I feel very fortunate. So I'm not going to press my luck or anything like that. I'm just good.
Yeah,
so
good.
I am done for a while.
Well, I'm glad
So
you're back.
All of our other tournaments are drivable, thankfully, or my husband will do it. So I don't.
Did you hear that, Justin?
That's right. He volunteers. He likes it more than I do.
Oh,
All those
That
logistics.
surprises
Well,
me.
and again, he's taking one kid. I had 3. There's different amount
whole
of
different,
logistics,
whole different
so
ball game.
It's
3
it's a little
versus
stressful.
yeah.
So, but I didn't lose anybody or luggage or anything.
Well, that's
So-
good.
And it's funny because I hadn't been in the airport for a year. They've changed so much. I
Have
was
they?
so out of my element. I'm like,
Well, you
how do you
texted me.
check bags these days? Like,
Do they still go
what
by
do
rows?
you do? There's no more lines. There's all these kiosks, and then there's bag drops, and I was annoying the staff because I'm like, where is the bag drop? She's like, over there. And she wasn't pointing very distinctively. So I looked like lost. She's like, lady, over there. I was like, okay, thanks.
But see, when you're used to, I would
only
feel
said
lost
one
if that was me.
colorful word in front of my children. But I was like, look, mommy's stressed. I'm sorry. I'm not perfect.
You're a better mom than mine. I said a lot, over and over again.
So yes, I'm thankful to be home.
I'm glad you're home. I missed you.
Yes.
I
Thank
texted
you.
you. I'm like, are you home yet?
I know. I felt like, it's funny. I was gone for like 5 days, but it felt like a year. I was like, are we ever going to leave the state of Tennessee? I love Tennessee. I went to school there. That was kind of fun. But
Well, we've just said one day that's going to be a girls' trip.
yeah, it would be fun. Not so much with kids, but it would definitely be a fun
Well, a girls' trip would not
So,
include kids.
No, it would not. No.
No. What are we
No,
talking about
no.
today? I mean, I
So-
know, but
as we have been working on the last couple episodes, we are continuing on. We'll finish next week regarding our small business series, how to start your own business. We call it big business because no matter what kind of business you start, it might become big.
Yeah. That's big to you.
Go big or go home.
That's
Heck
right.
Yeah. No matter if you're starting a dog walker service or a salon
Or a horse breeding
or, a donkey shelter, maybe, whatever. She says horse breeding because her husband and I are cracking up a new idea.
You weren't supposed to share that. Do you know how
very
personal
primitive right now. So
husband
it's in the
is.
starting stages. But what I do appreciate is he told my husband before I did. So
He did?
Yeah. So he's like paving the way. So
Well,
that is like
Max
that's
partners
genius.
share secrets.
They do, which I'm very thankful for. Because if it's just my idea,
Well, and if it's Justin and
odds are
I,
low.
we know that if it's David and Shannon in something,
it's like,
it's
uh-oh.
we're both in the back going, oh my God, this is probably
So
gonna
we
happen.
might be walking through this again.
Well, that's why I thought this was
together,
the fact that we're talking about it, because we might be starting up a business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the last few shows, just refining your idea, making sure you have kind of your ducks in a row, doing some market research, which is one of the most important things. Last week, we spent a lot of time on business plans and kind of gave a high-level overview. So if you want to know what components you should look for when you're looking for a good template for a business plan, listen to last week's show. Today, we're actually going to dive into what I think is the single most important part of starting your own business, and that is assessing the financial situation. So when people start businesses, they're not usually doing it for free. They want to have income from it. Maybe it's even a side hustle where they're not looking for primary income, but they want some type of monetary
They want some
gain.
profitability.
Totally. And so, but in terms of gaining profitability, you first have to get off the ground just by being able to cover your expenses. So today we wanted to kind of carve out some time and make sure that we covered, what are some options that you should consider when you're planning the financial runway. And we talked about that last week of creating a runway so that you're not under so much pressure that you really don't give yourself a chance to succeed because you haven't saved enough to provide that runway and that time for you to start up.
Especially if you're quitting a job to
Well, and
start
that's
your job.
actually the first decision.
Okay.
Is are you going to quit your current job or are you going to do your day job while you're kind of building this thing? I'm more conservative. I've always tried to keep my day job while I was building something else so that it wasn't such a hard unplugging of a financial situation.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a lot of reserve, if you have a lot of savings, if you have inheritance or what have you, you have that luxury and it's great because you can be all in. So you have to make that decision. I think first and foremost is what are you going to do with your current job that's paying you income? Are you going to keep it? Or are you going to just kind of go all in and give 100% to the new venture?
Right.
And many startups fail. We talked about last week that only 25% of businesses make it past 15 years. I think one of the primary reasons they don't even make it past 2 or 5 years is because they run out of money before turning a profit.
Yeah.
So you kind of get up and running, you cover your expenses. Your first goal is to break even, to at least cover your expenses so you're not losing money, so that there's no big hole in the bottom of your bucket that you've just created.
We don't like holes in buckets.
We don't like holes in buckets.
No.
And so the next part of that is to determine your profitability. Once you have your expenses taken care of, where can you go from there? Yes, you don't have to raise your hand. This isn't school.
It's fun for me. I enjoy it. Makes me feel like elementary. Is there, and you may be getting to this, so sorry if I'm cutting you off too quickly. Is there some type of easy formula or something that they can do if they were trying to determine, well, how do I know? Like, is there some type of little formula? Is that even an option, a formula of how they could determine how they break even?
Yeah, there is a formula.
Is that too cumbersome?
Well, there is a formula out there called a break-even analysis formula, and it's your fixed cost divided by your average price of your product or service minus your variable costs, which is a lot of factors that a lot of people
may not even know from the beginning.
And so what I like to do is I've always done, and I'm old school, but I've done, and it's worked for me. And like I said, my business has been successful for over 10 years now. Good old spreadsheets. I'm sorry,
lists.
but they work. I mean, like, I don't even do some of my businesses. I have fancy QuickBooks and an accounting team, whatever. But the ones that I started that I'm still fully responsible for, and I don't have a lot of employees, I keep it very simple and spreadsheet it out every single month.
As long as I've known her, it's always been spreadsheets. That's
Always.
it. Doesn't matter how the times have changed. It's
My
still spreadsheets.
accountants are still like, really? I'm like, yeah, because it works. I understand it. I don't want to take extra time.
Well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. You've clearly done well thus far.
I started, and I really like, simple budgets, simple spreadsheets. You kind of line item how much you think it's going to cost. I do this at the end of the year when I forecast for the next year. I still go through what do I think is going to come in? What do I think is going to cost different software, computers, or training, or salaries, or what have you, all of the things. Mm-hmm. And then that way I can easily determine, okay, is the revenue going to cost my expenses? What's my profit margin going to be?
So you more simplify. So even when you launched, like even when you started your new businesses,
I did.
It was that
and
simple?
I tried to keep costs as low as possible.
Yeah,
so that's
did.
the number one rule is watch
that.
your expenses. Sometimes people, they like lose their mind of like, oh, well, I need all these bells and whistles and I need all of these people.
Well, can I share an example?
No, you do not.
Can I share an example?
Yes.
So, of course, I don't do all her spreadsheet business. She's the owner, right? She hires me. Here I come. And I wanted this big new fancy printer. There's like one at the time. It's just me, maybe one other person. I mean, things were going to trickle in fairly quick, but it's this big fancy printer. And I'm totally sold on how many copies it does so fast. And it'll track this many people. And you can have a keypad and it's just me. She was like, no. Like, go to Walmart and get an HP and stick that sucker in the office. It's still the same one that we have today.
Totally. And it works fine. And I'm very thrifty.
I know.
I feel like something will have to be on its like dying last leg for me to replace it because I just want to make sure that we're using things.
Oh, the printer has to explode for her to be.
It does.
Yeah,
it has to be like,
You do, for the rest, I mean, like you've
my people, I take
have
better
a new
care
printer.
of than my stuff.
You do.
My stuff is like duct tape and whatever.
It is.
But I'm like, what? It still works.
Well, in your mind, you're like,
whatever.
somebody, hey, what can I list? Other printer can I use? Yes.
Or I'll send it to you to print. Hey, can you print this? How many times do I do that to you?
Hey.
Hey, being thrifty is part of the plan.
But I said that example because that's true. That's one prime example of how you can somebody can get lost in something
IT
fancy.
Equipment is I think number one. Number two is marketing. Marketing is important, but now with so many different free channels with social media, and I think website is another one that people try to convince you to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. It never works out because you always have to redo your website. And so finding really good people who have their own small business who are priced more effectively for small businesses, that's a huge place you can save money.
Well, in one of your companies, we've never done marketing.
That's right. And it's super successful by word of mouth.
Yeah, we've never done marketing.
And so, even in my, because I have a few companies and they're all of different sizes. Mm-hmm. And even my larger ones that have a team and that have a marketing team and get all enthralled with hiring these big old fancy consultants, I'm such the skeptic on the team. I'm like, yeah. And in 12 months from now, we'll have this spent and we'll have nothing for it. But I have to go along because I have partners. And I'm usually right.
No,
I mean,
you just
they try hard. They make fancy, pretty things.
Yeah, it looks good.
Converting that to clients is a totally different ballgame.
Yeah.
And so those are the three things. IT, what did I say? IT, marketing, and your website are three areas. I think if you do your diligence and find vendors that are in your local area, know what they're doing, can make it a good, but it doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles in phase one.
Especially in the beginning. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to be more well established.
Yeah.
And when you can actually afford those things where you're not having to, am I going to get a return on this? Is it going to matter? Am I going to go? If you have to think that much about it, you probably shouldn't.
Well, and even on several boards of nonprofits that I've sat on, it's always been marketing and website and IT where we're kind of like, okay, here's our third website vendor because we're going too big. It's not we all know people in the industry that just know how to do it and they don't have a huge expense account themselves, so they do things very economically, and it's really good, and they own it.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of vendors I really like, not the fancy firms per se.
Well, and we're not saying no risk, no reward. So if you're listening and you're like, well, but wait a minute, sometimes you have to take this big risk if it's something that you need in order to. We're not saying don't do that. That's not what we're saying.
What works for you. I'm just saying what's worked for me.
Well, but I think that's why the cost benefit analysis is important to make sure you at least think through these things
my
first.
budgets have always been shoestring on startup. I don't come from inheritance. I don't have this, I always kind of had to start with, okay, I'm working my day job.
Yeah.
And over time, I was able to make that full transition as being self-employed. So I had to go about it a little bit more scrappy than most. So
Scrappy.
Scrappy.
I like that.
You know?
I don't think I've ever called you Scrappy before. I like it.
Now, if you are, if you want to, like I said, build that runway, I like 6 to 12 months of operating capital, cash. If you start out with a small budget, okay, how much is it going to cost a month for me to operate? You just multiply that by 6 or by 12, and that'll give you an idea of what kind of funding you need. Now, with how to find funding, that's what I wanted to spend some time on the show today.
Yeah.
Because I think, especially with COVID, there's some new ways out there that didn't exist, I think, even 5 years ago. I think 5 years ago and still today, there's still business loans. You can still go to a bank and go through all of their hoops to get, approval. But
Their systems are outdated a bit.
Systems, if you don't fit into their box,
Yep, you're out.
it's very difficult for them to approve.
Yeah.
And I find that the larger banks have smaller boxes, actually, because they only approve a certain clientele that's usually not in the small business community. I found regional and local banks are far more acceptable and approving
And flexible.
for smaller business, because they get the community, they get the state they're in, they get the region they're in. They're not, they're not
as stringent.
so
They're
out
not
of touch.
Yeah, I agree. I will. A lot of banks, especially the bigger ones, want this 5-year history. A lot of times of a successful business. But I'm just starting, so
It's
I've
like the
got
chicken or the egg. Like, I need to start, so
Yeah.
I can give you what you need. But I need the starting capital
in order to get you what you need. Yeah.
So business loans are good. I think the Small Business Administration, the SBA, the U.S. Small Business Administration, has gotten a little bit better, I think, especially with all the stimulus package money we saw in 2020 and 2021. We saw a lot of EIDL loans we saw the PPP
I saw a lot of
forgiveness
EIDL
loans.
yeah.
So the Small Business Administration office really stepped up.
Yeah.
Now with the calls coming from that in terms of now someone has to pay for all that, I don't know if they'll continue that kind of lucrative offerings to small businesses, but
it did help
it's
save
willing
a
to
lot.
at least knock on the door. Business grants. So if you are from a minority-owned business or a woman-owned business, there's also government grants where you can apply for a grant for either from an organization or from the government, and it's a loan that you don't have to pay back. It's a grant. So the applications are a little laborious.
Yeah.
They are not a slam dunk. They're highly competitive, as you would imagine, right? Yeah. When we're out there, when we're all competing for anything that's free, the competition is a little
What if we
crazy.
started a female-owned horse breeding business? Do you think we could get a grant for that?
I like funding.
the government
I
would
like
give us-
doing micro loans, so like not sizable, not like always 6-figure kind of loans. But
Right.
I love, and one of the reasons why I meet with small business owners who tend to be women is because I like to invest in those kind of opportunities. So if it's a smaller type of loan, we can work that out. And I've there are little things here and there, but to me, it's been just something fun, even if it's just you break even on it, because there were people who believed in me, at the beginning of my career and ventures. And so to return that favor, I think is always important. On the other end, number 3, you could look for investors. This is where it gets a little trickier. And we'll talk about how to form your company, like what kind of legal entity you want to become.
Is this like going on Shark Tank?
It could be that. It could be finding venture capitalist money. Private equity is another buzzword you find in this space where you...
Venture capitalists?
Yes. So you are going, not so much to like your community, your mom, your dad, your neighbors, your friends, your family. You're going to more of investment houses. So companies who do this for a living.
Okay.
Now, last week we talked about a business plan. We talked about if you're going for, investors, if you're going for private equity funding or venture capitalist money, you're going to have a pretty airtight business plan because they don't want to take a lot of risk. So you need to have pretty solid ideas, objectives, financials, all those kind of projections that they look for. Yeah. And funny enough, before this show, so I was actually on a 5-hour conference call. It was just yesterday. And we were with, because a couple of partners that I have in one of our ventures are doing this now to expand beyond where we currently are. And so we were meeting with a VC firm, and the questions they ask you, you're like, I've never even thought of that. I mean, even like with an airtight, and I talked about last week's show to have flexibility, because there were some questions, because again, they do this for a living. They do this every day. They eat, breathe, sleep this. And a couple of their questions were like, that's a great thing that
we should think about
we
that.
should look into that. So it's an ongoing conversation, but you always have to remain humble.
Yeah.
Just because those gents and women that we met with yesterday are like, okay.
Well, hey, that's a good exercise in determining what you need to be thinking about that you never have before.
Totally.
Yeah.
So sometimes just meeting with them just to understand maybe where your holes are.
Yeah.
Where, maybe
Because
where
they're
you
going to
have
poke holes in it.
some gaps.
Yeah.
They'll find them.
They'll find holes.
So
see
if you
where
can't
it bleeds.
find them, go meet with a firm like that, and they'll find them for you, which is helpful. And then a couple other ideas out there is if you find a partner in something, partnerships I like a lot, because sometimes it's overwhelming to shoulder all of this by yourself. So a lot of, if you find a partner, some of my favorite partnerships has been when one partner has capital, but they don't have time.
Okay.
And the second partner has time and expertise, but they might not have capital. Maybe they're in a different phase of life. They haven't accumulated a lot of assets, but they have competence and they have availability and they have time. Those kind of partnerships work really well, where they can either share ownership or they can share in what's called synthetic equity. So maybe the capital provider doesn't want to necessarily give away ownership of the business, but they can give away synthetic equity where they're not giving away shares per se, but they're profit sharing in how the company does. I really like that model, especially for those out there who might not have capital. Those that have capital, this stuff is a little easier. Now, you're taking a lot of risk. Yeah. And with a lot of risk can come with great rewards, but it could also come with goose eggs.
With great loss, yeah, too.
And so, but those kind of partnerships I tend to like, especially if you trust each other, you have great rapport, you have maybe even a track record where you've worked at a previous company together or served on a board together. I like those kind of partnerships because, again, it's like they complete each other. And I think, so as I grow and if I'm fortunate enough to build assets, that's kind of what I'll be looking for in terms of legacy. Yeah. Where maybe, 10, 20 years from now, I don't want to work as long as I am now. And maybe some young buck comes, and he or she has that competence and has the willingness and wants to put more of the sweat equity in.
Right.
And
so you can ride off into the
partnership, so
just make sure you have a rock solid partnership
the
agreement.
more passive income you can have, the better.
The better.
I mean, who doesn't love passive income? Checks in the mailbox always work.
Fantastic. I love that model.
I know, I'm still working on that piece, but
I'll take that pay model. Yeah, if you want to stick checks in my mailbox all day long.
Totally. And the last part of funding that I wanted to at least tackle today was there's something called crowdfunding, and I thought this was interesting because this was something not available even maybe 2 years ago, where it's more of like what's called a syndicate version, where a syndicate is kind of, you find a lot of investors. So even if the company needs several $1 million or what have you, a lot of investors giving small amounts of money. So maybe everyone gives $10,000 or maybe everyone gives an amount that's not going to overwhelm one person who want to do these kind of things. And in return, there's 4 different things that the owner of the company doing the crowdfunding can return in investment. It could be shares of stock, kind of the traditional model. It could be a debt model where the crowdfunders receive an interest payment once a quarter, once a month, once a year, what have you, to receive those interest payments from retiring of debt for when they receive payments back from the organizational owners. Okay. It could be a total donation program where they're not expecting to return anything. I don't really see that a whole lot out there. But the final is rewards. So if I give you this amount, I will get a certain discount on all of your products and services, or these products and services for free. Or, so it's a way to, if you really like what someone's doing, it's able to participate where maybe it doesn't cost you as much to be a customer.
So didn't we see this? And maybe this isn't crowdfunding because I looked over this. Remember when Barstool started? I think they're now a crowdfunding. If they didn't, I know they didn't start that way. Aren't they a crowdfunding
and there are no
now?
returns.
Yeah.
So they would be a donation base. So yes.
Okay.
So
I think Barstool is a crowdfunding.
And I think they might have turned into a nonprofit. I
Maybe.
think they are, but I'm not 100% sure. But
'Cause
they
after
came
what-
out
yeah.
sponsoring a lot of local restaurant owners, caterers.
during COVID.
During COVID, I donated to
Yeah. Oh,
our
tons of-
local
yeah.
restaurant that was about to go out of business.
That campaign
Barstool.
was huge.
It was huge.
It caught
yeah.
like a firestorm.
It sure
People
did.
loved that. And then
Yeah.
I think since
That's
then
a
they've-
great example.
I think they are now crowdfunding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great example. So it's a lot to think about, but it's the most important thing to think about because if you don't have any money, you're not doing much business.
Well, and I didn't.
At the end of the day.
And we don't have time to get
You
into
know.
this day. And honestly, I had this really great article that, just to be completely
You were
transparent,
rushed
I
this
had a little bit of an
morning.
emergency
I
this morning, so I
know.
had to rush out the door. But just to throw this out there, if you're thinking about starting a business, you're like, I have bad credit. So
Yeah.
no business. I don't have 5 years. I have.
Sure.
I was researching this morning. Look up. There are other options. They will look at your credit, but they don't look at it the way a bank does. So maybe it's a lot lower because they look at it from the framework of everybody goes through hard times. Things happen. Something I think that was called like a CDFI, and now I wish I could tell you I knew what that stood for. But just if you're thinking about it, research alternative options for starting up a small business from a financial
Sure.
perspective, and you will find those. There were several. I'm so bummed I don't
There are
have it
new
today.
concepts being birthed daily.
Yeah, so look
you
that
know,
up. The
so.
crowdfunding, I think, was one of them actually,
Yeah.
but there were 3 others on there that to where you could capture a loan, but you're not jumping through the same hoops.
Well, there's a lot
the
of
current banking
I
systems
think
have.
of Cabbage is one of them, started by one of the sharks
Yeah.
from Shark Tank. So it's a small. She's not a bank. She's not starting a bank,
Yeah.
but she's going through. There's some kind of review process. They give loans up to $100,000, I think, is their cap. But their criteria is different than a bank's.
Yeah.
So maybe something
bet
like
it's something
that.
like
It's something
that.
like an independent financer
Yeah.
that maybe come with higher interest rates. I'm not.
Sure.
Take a look at it. But Cabbage, I think it starts with a K actually.
It does, yeah.
Is one of those examples. And so there are more and more companies coming in that smaller microfinancing area. And maybe I call microfinancing kind of anything from $1 to $100,000. But there's more and more opportunities out there, which that did not exist a couple of years ago. So I love that there's more options for all of you out there who are thinking about starting your own business. And I love that you brought that up because we're also going to talk about on next show to finish this up, talk through how should you structure your business for the right financing, for the right vendors, for the right employees?
Yeah.
How do you pick the right structure? Because again, this is a very overwhelming topic for most. And so we'll tackle that next show.
Okay.
But before we go, I just want to remind people, come to our website if you have questions. This is, an area that we spent a lot of time in. We have a lot of clients who do this. And so if you're starting your own business, you want more details, how we can help you, go to copytalkpodcast.com.
Contact
click
us.
the contact us button and we will get back to you. This is
Yeah.
really important to us.
We
You
live
know,
in
I
it
love
every day.
finance, but I love business. Being
Yeah.
a business owner, you have a heart for other business owners.
Yeah.
So we both have that. So find us that way. How else can people find us
As you hit your
Yes.
microphone. So we have, obviously we've got Instagram, DM us, hashtag. Come on, Ryan.
Well, the early leader was hashtag Eden's fault, but since
Oh,
then,
that's funny. What is that?
how about hashtag build that runway?
I
like
love
it.
that.
Build the runway.
See? You're the best, Ryan.
He's going to be our hashtag guru.
Yeah, he is. I love it.
You
You just
know
got
what
a
he
new
signed up
role.
for.
All right, so yeah.
Yes.
And
So
then,
we will-
of course, and we have YouTube.
Yep.
Our favorite. Hold on.
Favorite YouTube.
Subscribe,
Yes.
share,
Send it
tell
to
your friends.
Our audience tripled, as we mentioned
Yeah.
last show, tripled
Yeah.
since October. So that's
Because
because
if you're
of
listening,
guys,
sometimes you
so
don't see the
please continue to
shenanigans
do that.
going on in here.
That's right.
And it can be kind of
I
funny,
did see a
especially
fun
when
sweatshirt
Shannon.
regarding shenanigans that might be on your gift list this quarter.
Oh,
We'll
gosh.
see.
Okay.
More on that next
More
time.
on that
but
next
thank
time.
you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Financial planning services through Lighthouse Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor. Shannon Ross is CEO and managing partner of Lighthouse Financial. Lighthouse and Cambridge are not affiliated.